Putting a price on well-being, the new way of measuring poverty.
These are the faces of poverty, but the real question is, how do we measure the face of poverty?
The OPM does not provide an accurate measurement of poverty because the measurement used for resources fails to recognize the countless varying factors that affect income, such as government benefits and non-discretionary expenses.
Although the SPM acknowledges these factors, it must go a step farther to effectively gauge a new poverty measurement by taking into account human capabilities and functionings, because there is no unilateral way to measure poverty.
We can measure human capabilities and functions using the Human Development Index. This index measures education, life expectancy, and income measurements. It ranks humans into 4 tiers and measures the actual level of human development. Also, the HDI accounts for inequality. The official poverty measurement measures resources and compares them to a threshold. In this measurement, the resources include gross annual pre-tax income and the household's composition. The threshold is 3 times a thrifty food basket. There are many issues with the official poverty measurement. For example, it only takes into account gross annual pre-tax income as a resource, and only 3 times the thrifty food basket as a threshold. The OPM doesn't show how the world actually works, because it doesn't include in-kind or near-cash benefits, and it also doesn't include non-discretionary expenses like taxes, childcare, and work-related transportation. Furthermore, the OPM does not consider debt or the binary ratio. It does not subtract non-discretionary expenses, and assets are not calculated. Poverty analysis cannot only concentrate on income because incomes can be quite remote from the main motivation behind our concern with poverty, and it may also fail to provide empirical guidance regarding the genesis and prevalence of deprivation.
The official poverty measurement does not take into account capabilities. Poverty charts only show the black and white view of who is poor and who is not poor. They don't show who is on the border of poverty or who is extremely poor.
The OPM could define someone as poor, but does not take into account internal capabilities. For example, a highly educated man could live in rural New York, but he couldn't commute to work in the city because the price of the commute outweighs the benefits of working in the city. Instead, the man works at a rural farm in New York and earns a low income, even though he might have the same internal capabilities of someone working on Wall Street.
Like the OPM, the supplemental poverty measurement measures resources in comparison to a threshold. However, the differences are that the resources used are gross annual pre-tax income, in-kind benefits, and non-discretionary expenses. The threshold is measured by the 33rd percentile's household expenses on FCSU needs multiplied by 1.2. Although the supplemental poverty measurement takes into account more factors than the OPM, it still fails to provide a full picture of who is truly poor. Several issues with the SPM are that it is extremely costly. You cannot compare it with past poverty rates. We can't set policy on policy because we cannot measure who needs benefits because the SPM takes into account benefits. Therefore, we need something else to define who can receive governmental benefits. SPM is less black and white than the OPM because it is quasi-relative and takes into account factors other than just income, because it adds benefits and non-discretionary expenses as well as geography. However, it still doesn't give an accurate picture of who is poor. For example, a household at the 33rd percentile might not be spending the assumed 33% times the FSU 1.2 amount of income on FSCU needs. An individual instead at the 33rd percentile might have an adequate income for FCSU needs, but he might be allocating his resources differently than the SPM measurement assumes. For example, someone may be highly addicted to drugs and spending their money on drugs instead of FCSU needs.
As you can see on this chart, the OPM and the SPM show very different measurements of poverty. Therefore, neither of them give an accurate picture of what it actually means to be poor. Here's another graph comparing the OPM and SPM. When you look at this graph, do these measurements really tell you anything about who is poor? This graph does not show the true face of poverty.
There is a discrepancy between income lowness versus income adequacy. For example, two people have the same income. However, one has leukemia and spends 1/3 of his or her income on treatment each year. Thus, the medically disadvantaged person is poorer in the sense of adequacy, even though two people make the same income. Therefore, the medically disadvantaged person is poorer because they don't have extra money to spend on non-SCSU needs. This person is relatively poor because one must take into account self-satisfaction and well-being, not only policy well-being, in the numbers of poverty.
Poverty analysis cannot have an entirely financial connotation. Overall well-being matters in addition to financial well-being. Therefore, income is not very telling of what we need to know when it comes to measuring poverty. So, to measure poverty, we must take into account functions and capabilities. According to Sen, while functionings represent parts of the states of a person, the capabilities represent a combination of various doings and beings a person can achieve. So, we should care more about capabilities because it is what is available to the person in need as opposed to just income, which does not show non-economic poverty.
People can't achieve their goals without access to the resource. They do or be what they want. For example, two people eat the same amount. One is fasting intentionally for Yom Kippur, while the other lives in an underprivileged community and lacks access to basic nutritional needs. Therefore, we cannot measure solely on FCSU needs because a person has the capability to refuse the use of these resources. Capabilities mean people have freedom to choose how they will use their resources. The government cannot impose the same functions on everyone to make everybody equal because people have varying lifestyles, values, and incentives. Therefore, capabilities require that an individual has the resources to lead a minimally dignified life.
Ideally, capabilities will be the cornerstone and foundation of the SPM. The measurement will no longer be central to income, but both income and capability poverty. So, our new measurement will include non-economic and economic poverty. We will use the HDMI, or the Human Development Index, to measure poverty. Therefore, poverty will be measured discursively as well as quantitatively. The HDI combines indicators of life expectancy, educational attainment, and income into a composite Human Development Index. This chart shows the components of the Human Development Index. If a person has a substantial income, good health, and an adequate education, we can assume they will have the basic capabilities to lead a minimally dignified life.
Our new poverty measurement will be implicated in the next 10 years. At first, we will use the SPM with the OPM, and then slowly we will phase out the OPM. While phasing out the OPM, we will bring in aspects of the human capability study. We will slowly incorporate capability studies into what the SPM encompasses. In conclusion, the OPM does not give an adequate measurement of poverty because we cannot label poverty with a single number. We will instead put a price on well-being by combining the SPM with measuring human capabilities in order to get a more correct measurement of poverty.